That was a very, very, very long answer, and this is a very, very, very long video. I'm going to be answering a few questions that some of you guys have left on my comments. I just figured that I would make a video because if one person has this question, I'm sure 10 other people have the question too, right? Really quick housekeeping, this is my CS 479 from Orchid Corset, size 24. It looks like I have a bunch of fat flowing over, but it's just my t-shirt. Actually, it is some fat, actually, I'm not gonna lie, but it is my t-shirt bundled up so you can see the top of the corset. Don't pay attention to that. Pay attention to these questions and answers. Let's get started. As I'm editing this video, I realized that that window was way too bright and it like blurred my entire face throughout the whole video. I'm so sorry. I'm not gonna redo this video. And moving forward from here, I will try to be a better YouTuber, okay? Okay, so the first question is, how should we choose our corset? What features should be in it and what should we avoid? I'm gonna read you my reply and then I'll go into more depth. So I said the only way to choose your corset is based on your individual measurements, and I've made videos on how to measure your torso. The only feature you should 100% make sure the corset has is steel boning. Every other feature is based on preference, how long you want your corset, what material it's made from, etc. The only thing to avoid is buying Amazon corsets or fashion corsets. Some people say to avoid short torso corsets, but I disagree. Some people say to avoid satin or mesh corsets. Again, I disagree. It's all about preference, but again, just avoid Amazon and fashion corsets. I've made videos on how I choose my corsets and what I personally look for, but again, everyone is different. Measurements, materials, lengths, etc. So measure yourself, then look at the corset companies, MysitC Corsets, Timeless Trends, Orchid Corset, Swoonbusk, etc., and see which corset best fits your measurements. Okay, so let me go in depth a little bit in regard to the answer that I answered, and I'll like take it apart little by little. The only way to choose your corset is based on your individual measurements, and I have done videos on that, but just to kind of reiterate, in the middle of the day, you're gonna take off your clothes and you're gonna get a measuring tape and you're gonna measure around your waist, which is like the smallest little indent on your waist. Some people have more straighter torsos, so just find the smallest little indent on your torso and measure that. That's your waist size. So say your waist size is 30 inches. You're gonna subtract 4 to 6 inches and that will be your corset size. Then you're gonna measure your underbust, which is usually measurement right below your bra. Like, you know, if you're like a 34C, your underbust is most likely 34 inches, right? Do it once again, even though all your bras are 34C, just do it again and measure right below your bra strap. And okay, cool, that's 34 inches. Then you're gonna measure 4 inches, usually 4 inches below your belly button, and that will be your hips or your hip spring. And then you're gonna measure from your underbust to your hips or your hip spring, and that will be the length of the corset. So those are 4 measurements or 4 key measurements that you should be measuring when you're first starting corset training. And again, I have videos on this. I'll link them in the description on like exactly how to measure. I measure my measurements with you in the video so you can kind of get a better understanding. All right, so then I said the only feature you should 100% make sure the corset has is steel boning. Now, there are some corsets like Crimson Lily Corsetry. Sorry, I don't 100% remember the name. It has a corset where it is plastic boning, and you can 100% waist train in that corset because the plastic bonings are very strong. But like if you get a corset off Amazon and it has plastic boning in it, that's not going to be great for waist training. That's why I recommend starting off with steel boning corsets. And again, that is the only feature that you need to 100% make sure your corset has. Every other feature is based on preference, how long you want your corset to be. So from my underbust to my hips, technically I would be considered a short torso corset, which I have tried short torso corsets in the past. I just think I like the longer torso corset better because it covers more of my fat and it pushes everything in just a little bit more. It makes it more like seamless kind of. So again, the length of your corset depends on your measurement, but it also depends on your preference. And then another thing that depends on your preference is the material. So some people say don't get mesh corsets because they stretch. This is my MysitC 254 and you can see right here it's mesh. But according to a lot of people and from what I've seen, the mesh at Mystic City corsets are very strong. So I don't know. But I do have a mesh corset from Orchard Corset and I can stretch it. So maybe that's not the best. What's going on? What did I do? Oh, whatever. Maybe that's not the best for waist training, but it is cute, like a fashion corset. Again, this is for people who want to waist train, okay? We're not talking about fashion right now, or ever on this channel, to be honest. Another thing to avoid that some people say are satin corsets. I think this is a satin corset. Satin corsets are pretty soft. They feel almost like silk, not as soft maybe sometimes even softer, I don't know. But a lot of people also say that satin corsets, they're not as durable when it comes to tight lacing or waist training, so to avoid satin corsets as well. So typically go for like a cotton corset, or I don't know what else is out there, leather, something like that that's very durable. But in my personal humble opinion, I love satin corsets because they have a beautiful finish. They're kind of shiny, but not as shiny as like PVC or latex. So yeah. So to reiterate everything, when you're looking for a corset, 100% make sure that it has steel boning in it, and then everything else is pretty much secondary. Material, the length of your corset, etc. Also, I would say another feature to 100% make sure that your corset has is the correct rib spring and the correct hip spring. I will leave the video in the description that goes more into detail with regard to rib spring and hip spring. Long story short, to find your rib spring or your hip spring, you will take your underbust measurement, so remember it was 34 inches, and you will subtract that by your corset size. We found our waist, which was 30 inches. Let's subtract 4 inches. So 26 inches is our corset, or 24, but we'll stick with 26 inches. That's our corset size. Our underbust is 34. So we're gonna subtract 34 and 26, which is 8. So our rib spring is 8 inches. Same thing with hip spring. You take your hips, let's say it's 40 inches, and you subtract 26, which is your corset size. That's 14, so your hip spring is 14 inches. Before I move forward, I just want to say that Lucy's Corsetry on YouTube and her website have so much information, and I will forever talk about her and send all of you guys to her website and her YouTube channel because that's where I learned about corsets, and I figured might as well send you guys all there too. So yeah, check her out too. In regard to what to avoid fashion corsets. So the brand I can think of is Orchard Corset, and they have some fashion corsets. So if you're wearing corsets solely for waist training purposes, I would highly suggest that you refrain from purchasing a fashion corset. Specifically from Orchard Corset, they make really pretty fashion corsets, but it's not gonna help you train your waist. And I don't want you to buy a fashion corset and then come back to me and be like, you ruined everything. You told me to purchase a corset from Orchard Corset. I ended up purchasing the wrong corset. You know what I mean? So let's just refrain from fashion corsets altogether. And let's also refrain and stop purchasing corsets from Amazon. Even if it says like real steel bone, real corset in the description or whatever. If it were me and I were first starting wearing corsets, I would not purchase something that may be the wrong corset. Like I'm not gonna spend $50. Like, okay, cool, it's $50 on Amazon, but there's a 50% chance that that corset could be the wrong corset. The descriptions aren't always right, so buy a corset from a reputable brand, please. Okay, so I hope I answered that question a little bit more in depth on how to choose your corset. Again, get your measurements going, figure out your measurements, write them all down, and then go on Mystic City corsets, Timeless Trends corsets, Orchid corsets, Swoon Bust corsets, and look for a corset that best correlates with your measurements. The only feature that must be in it is steel boning. If you want to get a busk, cool, get a busk. This is considered a busk. They're like little clasps. You see some that have zippers. Personally, I've never tried a zipper before. I have heard good and bad things. One of the bad things I've heard is that if one tooth on the zipper gets ruined, then the entire corset gets thrown away. I mean, unless you are a sewing expert and you can fix it, then whatever. But I prefer busk, so make sure it has these clasps on it and not a zipper, or not those like cute latches, like they look like pirate latches. I would refrain from getting those as well. If you're a beginner, just get these busk looking things. That's another feature that you should probably, look for when you're first purchasing your corset. And then of course avoid Amazon corsets, fashion corsets. Also avoid just belts that just wrap around your waist, because those are not going to help you waist train. They might cinch you in for a little bit, but over time, if you wear it, they may not help you waist train. And I have not tried this personally, but from reading on Lucy Corsetry, again, they just don't do anything for waist training purposes. So refrain from Amazon corsets, fashion corsets, and also belts. Like those big belts you see, even if they have like a busk or two on them, don't get it. Okay, let's move on. What advice would you give me to start waist training? What types of corset and where to find them? Let me read you the reply. I said, I suggest you start watching my corset beginner tips playlist. It has a lot of my tips and tricks for start waist training, and I'll do an updated video, which this is the updated video. Please watch my playlist. I have a lot of random tips and tricks that maybe the title doesn't really depict that there's gonna be tips and tricks in it, but if it's in the beginner playlist, corsets beginner playlist, which I'll link in the description box below, watch the video. And it's not just for my hours, okay? It's for your benefit, okay? There's some good stuff in there, if I do say so myself. Now, first piece of advice I would give you to start waist training, if you've never put on a corset in your entire life, but you want to start waist training, do I have any around here? I would suggest starting with a sweatband. I'll put a link in the description box below. I have my Amazon storefront and it has the sweatbands that I use when I don't want to wear my corset. If you've never worn a corset in your entire life and you don't know how it would feel to have something tightly wrapped around your torso, I would suggest getting a $10, $15 waistband, or even a waist trainer, those latex waist trainers, or just a sweatband, and wrapping it around your waist, wearing it all day, and seeing how you feel, rather than purchasing a corset from a reputable brand, of course, trying it on, and then not being able to return it because you wore it too much and now they can't resell it, right? I mean, if you want, get a $40, $50 corset from Amazon, which I just suggested not doing, but get a $40, $50 corset. Just see how it feels to have something wrapped around your torso for a long period of time to see if you even like it. Because, sometimes we see things on the internet and we're like, okay, I really want to do that. But then you do it and you're like, okay, wait a second, this is not for me. I'm not doing this. So I would prefer that you spend a little bit of money and see if you like it, versus spend a lot of money, realize you don't like it, and not even be able to return the damn thing. That is the first piece of advice I would give you. The second piece of advice, which should probably have been the first piece of advice, is to do a ton of research. When I started waist training back in 2013, I did research for about 6 months, 3 to 6 months, before I decided to purchase my very first corset. And I binge watched all of Lucy Corsetry's YouTube videos and was like, okay, you know what? I think it's time. So do a ton of research. Watch my beginner playlist. Watch all of Lucy's videos. Go on Reddit and read reviews about people wearing corsets. Go on Instagram, go on TikTok, go on any other social media platform and just learn from other people's mistakes, before you purchase a corset. That is like, if I could give one piece of advice, it would be that. To learn from other people's mistakes before you purchase a corset and move forward with waist training. And my third piece of advice to start waist training would be sit down and ask yourself, why do you want to waist train? Is it because you want to wear corsets and make your fashion look cuter, like you want to wear corsets with your outfits? Or is it the reason maybe you want to make your natural waist smaller? Is it because you are doing this out of revenge? You want to look amazing because your ex just broke up with you? Like, what's the reason, okay? Also, keep in mind that waist training results are not always 100% guaranteed and not always 100% permanent. Now, take that with a grain of salt because there are some people, including myself, who have had permanent results. But there needs to be maintenance. So you need to also ask yourself, do I want to do this the rest of my life? Because say you wear a corset or a waist trainer, whatever the hell you want to wear, and you start waist training and then you lose like 2 inches off of your waist. Are you going to continue wearing a corset? Because if you do not continue to wear a corset, if you do not continue to wear one of those latex waist trainers, there is a 50% chance that your natural waist could go back to 30 inches instead of it being 28 inches. That happened to me. I was waist training and I got down to 28 inches and I stopped waist training for I think 2, maybe 3 years, something like that. And I'm back to a 30-inch waist, okay? So you need to ask yourself, why do I want to do this? And will I do this the rest of my life to maintain my results? Like with dieting and exercising, you lose 20 pounds dieting and exercising only. Are you going to continue your diet and your lifestyle of working out all the time, or are you just going to go back to being a couch potato? Because with waist training, it's kind of like a lifestyle. Like you can't just like get your results and dip. There is a maintenance. So ask yourself this and be 100% with yourself that you are going to maintain wearing a corset. It doesn't have to be like 8 hours a day, every single day, the rest of your life. But just ask yourself and make sure that you are willing to kind of change your lifestyle for beauty, okay? For aesthetics, for corset training. That's a piece of advice that I would have you ask yourself. Let's move on to the next part of the question, which what types of corset and where to find them. So I kind of answered this question in the other question's answer. You're gonna look for the type of corset that has steel boning in it with busks and has a correct rib spring and hip spring for your specific measurements and body type. You can find them at Mystic City Corsets, Timeless Trends, Orchard Corsets, Swoon Busk, and those are all the brands I know off the top of my head that you should 100% definitely look into. I have tried all of them except for Swoon Busk, but I do know a lot of people who have tried and loved Swoon Busk, so that's why I'm throwing them in my list. Usually I don't recommend anything if I haven't tried it, but I know a lot of people who have tried it and loved it, so there you go. Okay, the next question is, for how long do you have to season before you start wearing it tightly? My response was, it depends if you're a beginner or not. If you're a beginner, maybe 3 to 4 weeks. If not a beginner, I'd say 1 to 2 weeks. Now, let me just kind of reiterate that corset seasoning is for you and for your corset to get acquainted, okay? If I just got this corset out of the box and I'm about to put it on and I'm trying to get it as tightly as it can go, it could hurt me if I have never worn a corset in my entire life, and it could also hurt the corset because the corset doesn't know where your curves are. Everybody's curves and body is different, okay? That's why I say like 3 to 4 weeks for a beginner, maybe shorter, maybe longer. I don't know, it's up to you. So you need to just kind of play it by ear and figure it out. If I've never worn a corset in my entire life and I just purchased this corset and I put it on, I'm gonna put it on extremely loosely and I'm going to tighten it up little by little, maybe a couple of hours throughout the day, and I'm only gonna wear it for like 4 to 6 hours. If you look on brand websites, there's like specific ways on how every brand thinks that you should season your corset. And if you talk to people who have worn corsets in the past, they too have very different ideologies on how corset seasoning should take place. But because this is my channel and I am the star of this channel, I'm gonna tell you the way I think corset seasoning should take place. And that is that as a beginner, maybe 3 to 4 weeks, wear your corset for 3 to 4 weeks, maybe like, I don't know, 2 to 6 hours per day, and just lightly tug at the strings ever so lightly, and just wear it like that. And then the next day, tug it a little bit more. The next day, tug it a little bit more until you're on the 3rd or 4th week and your corset is not closed, but it feels kind of snug, like someone is giving you a nice little tight hug around your waist kind of thing. If you've worn corsets and you are a corset connoisseur and you know everything about corsets, but you're kind of like, how long should I season this corset? Like, this is my first MysitC corset, and I was like, how long should I season a MysitC corset? I've worn corsets for, a decade, but I've never had a MysitC corset. So I went onto their website and they said, I forget what they said, I'll put it right here, how they think you should season your corset, and that is what I did, kind of. I didn't do it exactly how they said to do it. I did wear it a lot longer. I think I wore it for like 8 to 10 hours a day because my body was so used to corsets, but I didn't wear it as tight. But I did wear it for a long duration, if that makes sense. That is the answer to that question. And if you have anything else to add, please comment down below. We all know that everybody and their mom and their dad is reading the comments as they watch the video. And sometimes if you read a comment, you'll be like, oh, that's a good thing. I didn't hear it in the video. So please, if you have any advice, drop them down in the comments. I only have my experiences to go off of, and if you have a different experience, please share that. Okay, so the next question is, how have your results been so far? So it's really hard to answer this question because my results vary dramatically. How tight I'm wearing my corset, how long I'm wearing my corset, if I've taken breaks from wearing my corset. So let's go back to 2013 and talk about the results that I saw when I first started wearing my corset. When I first put on a corset and I wore it for I think 3 to 4 months, I closed my corset. I think it was like a 26-inch corset. I had about a 31, maybe 32-inch waist. And honestly, I could not for the life of me tell you if I lost any inches during that period, but I do know that I closed my corset, which was very taboo to close a corset that fast, but I did it and I have no regrets. And as I continued to wear my corset, I noticed that I was getting less bloated. My digestion was a lot better. I was using the bathroom a lot more frequently. Okay, not like diarrhea type frequently, but like instead of going to the bathroom like every 3 days, I'd go every day or every other day, which was amazing to me. My confidence spiked because my shoulders were being pushed back. I was being forced to stand up straight. My mom always told me, Sinduz, stop looking down at the ground. And the corset like really forced me to stop looking down at the ground. Because my posture was better, my self-confidence was better. And of course, I'm not gonna leave out the fact that I felt more sexy and more sensual. I've always had kind of like this thing with feeling sexy. I mean, I have had curves since like a preteen. My body I got my period when I was 10 years old, so my body transformed very rapidly at a very young age. So I was a young kid and I had these kind of features, so it was like tone down your sexiness. I wasn't trying to be sexy. I was 10, 11 years old, but that's what, adults, they do. They tell you to tone down your sexiness, especially at a young age. And as I got older, it instilled in my mind, tone down your sexiness, tone down your sexiness. Don't show off your curves kind of thing, because of that young age of having those types of features. So when I put my corset on, I just started to feel more sexy because I could not tone down my curves. I could not hide my curves when I wore a corset. Even if you like wear something over your corset, like if I put a jacket over me right now, obviously the corset is gonna not show, but my boobs are gonna look a lot bigger. So my curves are still like boom in your face kind of thing, right? So those were the results that I was seeing back then. Then as I started wearing my corset more and more, and I started to tight lace and, you know, go down to a 22-inch corset, which I think was like in 2018, 2019, something like that, I don't know. I started to notice that so I have hip dips. I have a hip, I have a dip, and then I have this part of my torso. And I noticed that my hip dip started to show a lot less because this part of my torso was getting pushed in from the corset because it was a long line corset. And I started to love my body a lot more. I've never liked my hip dips. The corset was just kind of like telling me that you don't have hip dips. I don't know. It was weird. That I'm just telling you guys my results, okay? Take it or leave it. So that was another result I was seeing. And then when I stopped wearing my corset or stopped wearing corsets altogether, this was like maybe 2021. No, maybe something like that. Times are all looped. My bloating came back, my indigestion came back, constipation came back. I started hunching over a little bit more. Not as much because I think that my posture was still like instilled in me. But because my mom always telling me, Sinas, don't look down. So I was like instilled. Then the corset, you know, made it a little bit more accentuated. All of that stuff came crashing down. So those were the results, right? Then I started wearing my corset again and I noticed those same results from, you know, back when, starting up again. And now my results are, when I take off my corset, my waist looks like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's like very curvaceous. My stomach looks a lot flatter when I wear my corset, and even when I take it off, it still looks pretty flat. Unless I eat. Then of course, you know, we always get food babies. At least I do. What else? I know you guys want to hear like, when someone asks me what are your results, I think what they're asking is how many inches have you lost from wearing corsets? And it's so hard for me to answer that because the answer is 0. I have not lost any inches because my diet is still kind of wobbly. My exercising routines are still wobbly, especially after my little ankle debacle. Sometimes I take breaks when I wear my corsets. So to answer that question, what have your results been? I think what you guys are asking is how many inches have you lost? And the answer is I haven't lost any inches. It's really hard for me to say that because this is a waist training / dream body journey channel. And it's really hard for me to say I haven't lost any inches, but I have seen other results which keep me going. And in time, once my diet is fine-tuned, which is, well, it's like 90% there, I will definitely start losing inches. That was a very, very, very long answer, and this is a very, very, very long video. What's a good corset for beginners? I'm coming from a few months of a waist trainer. I answered and said, there isn't one corset that's good for beginners, unfortunately. It depends on your measurements. Check out MysitCityCorsets.com and look based on your measurements. I have videos on how to measure. And I get this question a lot, what's a good corset for beginners? There isn't a good corset for beginners. And if a corset brand is saying this is a really good corset for beginners, it's kind of like, well, are you taking that beginner's measurements into account? Like, not everybody's measurements are the same. Therefore, there is no one corset for beginners, okay? If you're a beginner and you've never worn a corset in your entire life, you still need to do what I said in the beginning, which is measure your body and find a corset that specifically pertains to your specific measurements. That is the corset for beginners. That's what you have to do. That's literally it. This video is already extremely long, so if you have any other questions, drop them down in the comment section and I will do my best to either answer it as a reply in a comment or do another video. I love you guys. Mwah. Bye.